City of Stevens Point Board of Park Commissioners meeting, recorded February 2nd, 2022.
Okay, it's 6:30, so the March 2nd, 2022 Board of Park Commissioners meeting will come to order, please. And Director, would you read the roll call?
Right. Here. Here. All. Hirsch. Here. Don.
Here.
O'Connor. Here. Shidowski. Here. Alder Short. Here. Alder Smolinski. Sorensen. Here. Great. And Alder Zerzo. Here.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2, approval of February 2nd, 2022 meeting minutes.
I'll move.
John moves, you second. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Item number 3, approval of Little Free Library and Pantry installation at 9 Park, proposed by Keeley, Sullivan of Next Home Priority Realty.
Okay, so this item was submitted, it started through a contact me to the director, just asking if there was the ability, you can kind of see the email chain in the packet. Basically, the proposal from Keeley is that Next Home Priority would work with a carpenter, which they've got set to go. They would purchase and supply the materials. They also supply the install, which is work with them to mark the locates of utilities. And then they would work to get it basically up and running, or it's supply and maintain it. So how this is set up and what staff is recommending is that this would move forward. It may move slightly in the field when the snow is gone, so we'd ask for staff's ability to kind of make that decision. It's got to go a little bit one way east or west, but then they would maintain it too. So if it ever got to a point where it was need repair, need replacement, we'd make the decision at that time if we wanted to do it ourselves, but otherwise the city is at this point said it could be removed if it got to that point. So we're recommending approval based on the partnership and Next Home Realty taking care of that, and this would go in this spring. We can start building it. Keeley did say she was thinking of joining. I'm not sure if she's the iPhone online or the phone number. Is someone from Next Home on the call?
Does anybody have any questions for Dan or comments?
The one that needed, what's the situation with that one out there?
I think in the same manner. That one predates me, so I'm not exactly sure. To be honest, I'd have to research it. I think it's very similar.
I mean, I think they're a great asset and everything. I just noticed the one at Mead sometimes becomes a garbage waste area. So I guess that's, again, I think it's a great idea. I think they're doing that.
And there isn't really much out in that neighborhood either, so that would be a nice addition.
And the location too, if you recall, actually, it's kind of next to a shoulder. It's actually quite a few people that park along that area too. So it's not necessarily in the park. I think it's more towards the park.
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve that item.
Motion by Mike, second anywhere? Second by Bob. All right, all those in favor of the Little Free Library and Pantry in Hyde Park, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Item number 4, approval of awarding a Mead pickleball court project to Upper Midwest Athletic Construction Company in the amount of $51,524.
There is we're getting a note. Is the audio on? We're getting a note in the chat that it's not coming through.
Should be good to go. It might be a switch that you need to do on your laptop, potentially.
Anyone else? Wayne, you're saying you can't hear us. Anyone else hear us on the Zoom call? It looks looks like. You know how you work on it? Not sure. Very good here. Great one.
No, I don't think that's needed.
Stand by.
Yep. Another thing that should be changed from last meeting, that's,
Wait, can you hear us on your end? No.
We're making that check when you.
Wayne, try that flow ice there. Wayne, can you hear us yet? No. That's all right.
Which is it?
Oh, I can't hear you. Yeah, that's great.
On this commission.
How about now? Wait, is that better? Okay, you can. We know what happened.
He's talking away, but.
Really?
All right.
Wayne, if you can hear us, we're gonna keep going. We cannot hear you on our end. So as soon as we can fix it, we will, but based on the attendance, I think we have enough to continue here in person, so. Bear with us as best you can, I guess. You can use the chat feature. I'll keep looking at the chat. Anyone else on the call, if you want to use the chat for anything that you have for questions or input, we can reference the chat before we take action. So we'll let out.
Okay, we were
Where were we
on the
before?
mean pickleball court.
Okay, great. There is a memo in the packet for this, but to summarize the memo in short, as you may remember, we have budgeted to convert the 2 existing tennis courts in Mead Park to 6 pickleball courts. So we did open bids. We received 2. One was quite a bit higher than the other one, but the recommendation based on how we budgeted this was that the city capital budget was going to provide $15,000 in funding, and the rest would be funded through our park fees in lieu of park land. So the balance in the fund will handle that. So essentially the memo just states we'd be looking to award with a slight contingency, 10%, so $51,524. And that project, if awarded, then we'll move forward here this spring. So staff recommendation is to award to Upper Midwest Athletic Construction Incorporated for the amount of $51,524.
Any questions for the director, Bob?
Yeah, I am surprised at the amount because my impression was it was just a matter of lines and markings and things like that. Is that
So it's actually
Is
quite,
it reasonable?
actually really reasonable because it's actually quite a bit more. So if you recall what we did in Gerke Park, which I think cost, I'd have to look back at the exact number, but a little over, almost 70,000. It's the same process for this. So they actually remove the the 4 tennis net posts. They have to concrete those holes back in. Then they have to actually grind the surface flat so that we can put the new surface on. After they do that, they go and crack fill all of the cracks on the existing court, which is called an armor product. That actually adds quite a bit of cost too, but it keeps the moisture from expanding the asphalt underneath. Once they've got that, basically the sub base is prepared, then they actually roll on the new acrylic surface that is like what you see, the new color and things to the surface on it. Then after that is actually when they first put the lines down. When they paint the lines, that's kind of the last step. And then we're also getting 6 new, it'd be 12 posts that the nets get attached to, brand new nets, and then there's chain link fencing that actually separates the courts. Because in pickleball, when you stack the courts, obviously the ball itself as it gets hit can roll between them. So with 6 courts, you need the separation fence so that it doesn't roll into the other field of play, if that makes sense. So yeah, it is more, but there's quite a bit of nuts and bolts in the actual conversion. If we were actually just removing the 2 that are there and leaving them as 2 pickleball courts, yeah, we could have done it significantly cheaper, but the conversion to 6 adds that extra cost. But it's a great question, yeah.
Thank you. I'm wondering the same thing.
Other questions? Alder?
As a gesture of tennis to pickleball goodwill,
We have a motion to approve. We have a second? Yes, second by John. Okay, any further discussion?
I guess the only thing I'll add, just as a reminder, kind of how we got here is it started back actually with kind of the Gerke project. So there was a partial conversation of like a hybrid there, and the community overwhelmingly supported leaving that as a 6-plex of tennis. And then it was suggested to the department basically, hey, how about that location for pickleball? So we did get a lot of feedback on this, and I think the community is going to be pretty excited about having.
relative to the cost of Gerke, I was surprised it wasn't more. Because I know that the condition is way worse over there.
Yeah.
Okay. You have the same perception.
So we better take it then.
And just out of curiosity, there was some talk back when we started discussing this about the local pickleball group doing some fundraising. Is that off the table?
So my understanding is they are actively still looking at a much larger complex in the neighboring municipality.
Okay.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of awarding this pickleball project to Midwest Athletic Construction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Passes. Item number 5, approval of awarding Donald Kopp's Municipal Pool Replastering Project to Badger Swim Pools Incorporated in the amount of $180,642. Director?
This one's a little bit, there's kind of a 2-step process that's being proposed here. So our capital budget as itself right now only includes funding for $150,000 to do the main pool well. And the reason that happened is capital dollars are always very tight. And when we looked at it, we ultimately, it worked out that right now the capital budget has a placeholder for the other 2 pool wells in 2023. And that was just to make the numbers work within the whole city capital budget. That's where it worked out through finance. Because we had to do the spec, and it's the same process in each pool well, it made sense to just finish the spec and bid it to see what the cost was. And we came in really close in the grand scheme of things if we did all 3 at one time. So what the memo basically states is it says for an additional $22,040, we would meet the bid requirement where we could have all 3 pool wells done at the same time. There's a number of advantages. Number one to that, labor continues to go up, products seem to continue to go up, so it's reasonable to say that next year it's probably going to be more money. Additionally, we're going to be shutting the pool down probably just a couple days early in August to allow this to be completed in the fall. So if we're able to do all 3 pool wells at one time, we don't have to re-go through that exercise next year. Additionally, if we get a dozen to 14 years or so out of this, we come due at the same time again than in the future. So we talked with Comptroller Laddick to see if it could work. And the comptroller said he's got a couple ideas that he'd get into specifics with the finance committee about potential funding. So here tonight, how it's recommended at Park Commission is that we've moved forward with awarding this to Badger Swim Pools to try to do all 3 pool wells at one time, pending that approval from the Finance Committee in a week, if they can absorb the cost to do that. If we couldn't, then we could still go back to the base bid, and Finance would take that final action based on this, this board's recommendation.
Okay,
I'll move to accept.
all right. Motion from John, second anywhere?
Second.
Second from Mike. Moved and seconded to approve the awarding of the Donald Copps replastering project to Badger Swim Pools. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, that passes. Thank you. Item number 6, award the downtown landscape maintenance contract to Schulfer's Landscaping in the amount of $15,450 per year for 2022 and 2023.
So Todd Ernster within the department is who oversees this contract and goes out for the quotes every year. And this is for a 2-year contract. Really, the main areas are around the square, but there's some other miscellaneous planter beds and things that are incorporated within the downtown maintenance. So they prep the locations in the beginning of the year, they maintain them throughout, and then they also prepare them for the winter. My understanding of the history is, when some of these things were developed, due to staffing levels, it was contracted and budgeted by the city to be contracted because additional staff wasn't added. And it's continued to work on that. We've budgeted those dollars annually. So we came up on the end of the contract here with actually Schulfer's, so we put it back out. The memo states the companies that it was sent to. So staff recommendation, we actually only received 1 quote back, which isn't ideal, but it's a sign of the times a little bit for some staffing levels, but it is within the budget, so our budgeted amount. So we recommend approval to Schulfer's for an additional 2 years here, and they have had it the past several years.
Okay, any questions for Dan?
Yeah, what's more specifically do they do? I mean, we're talking about, on the average day when they're out there working on it, what are they doing? Are they planting something or?
Yeah, essentially they're doing all of it. So Todd meets with them in the beginning part of the year, and they go over the condition of what we envision it to look like. And then they are in charge of planning it and upkeeping it. They bring down if we need mulch or if we have to prepare it, watering it if it's necessary. So they basically do a turnkey on those locations, and then we don't put any internal staff resources to it other than basically planning what we're going to put there. They also are in charge of if, there's a lot of foot traffic down there, so, as things get disturbed or things, they go back and maintain it. And I have a document if you'd like to see the specific spec. We could
I was
definitely
just
send it over.
wondering, and is this, does this include some of the things, I remember a few years ago, you used to have things like master gardeners and some of these volunteer groups doing, so is this replacing what some of the volunteers used to
Yeah,
do?
I'd have to ask if the volunteers used to do it. I think when they redid the squares when this began, is the way I understand it. They started, when it was redone, I think there must have been a discussion with my predecessor at the time saying, hey, how would we take this on? And the city budgeted some contractual work to do it. And there's been a couple extra areas added in, but that's where that was. So I don't think it was master gardeners, unless it was before the redevelopment, but I think when they redid the square with the fountain and the planters is when this came to be, is my understanding.
Dan, does it include anything going up Main Street also?
There is a couple areas in there. I know that there's a planter bed even a little bit outside that area down by Bucholtz that's included. So we've got a full specifics, and I should have brought the document, I apologize. I can get the exact locations, but they're the same as what they've been for a number of years.
Thank you. Okay. Can we get a motion on the downtown landscape maintenance contract?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, John, okay.
Second.
And Alder Zarazua, seconds. All right, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, passes. Item number 7, discussion on Bucholtz Park sand area and beach house building on the draft plans.
So this item is a continuation of, I think we've had 2 or 3 discussions. In addition, there was a subcommittee that was involved with kind of the layout. That results back to some feedback we had gotten from some community members about the condition of the site. And we talked through the history of kind of the budgets changing, lifeguards, and the maintenance of the area. So if you recall last year, we started talking about can an improved swim area be incorporated with kind of a complex or a viewing area to be on the water, as well as improving the building. And where we kind of hit a standstill at that time was, is the building able to be saved? So at that time, the direction of staff was to have a structural analysis of the building done, which has happened, and that's what kind of led to this latest rendering. So on the building first, what we had somebody come in and evaluate was, is it eligible for remodel without having to basically rebuild the whole thing? The structural analysis is not included in the packet, but the conclusion document stated that while there's some normal maintenance things that'll have to be done, you'd have to put a new roof on it, you'd have to do some of the tuck pointing in locations, which we've tried to keep up with. There is some mold inside the building. There's some ADA code items in terms of like the hallways for the restrooms and the access. But aside from that, they said that the building is very eligible for remodel, so that if it's not that anything that they saw would prohibit it from being able to be done. They didn't put a cost estimate on it, but it gave us the green light to say, okay, we could look into options. After we got that news late last year, the reason it didn't come right back to the committee was we were trying to work through who would have to review it. Is that local historic preservation commission because of it being a WPA building, or is it on the state historic registry? So we worked with Director Karnowski through the community development office to see which of those two would be required. Through that review process, we determined that an official approval or a certificate of appropriateness would actually not be required from either, the way that it's currently listed. There's some photos and there's some details of it being included in locations, but it's not on one of those official registers. So where does that leave us? On the building side, as a good faith gesture, staff feels that we should probably, if we move into the rendering stage, still go for some feedback from the local historic preservation commission, because I think everyone would probably be in agreement to say we want to pay honor and tribute to the history of the building, and try to make it work for kind of preserving and keeping the intent, but also not, I'm going to just mute this here as I can, but also not just go do something without involving them. So that's one of the recommendations tonight, is as we move this forward, staff is looking for authorization from the Park Commission to go through that step. Get a real basic rendering. We're not talking architectural plans, but going for some feedback from the local Historic Preservation Commission before it comes back before this body to adopt or say it's good to go. What we've talked about in principle as staff is that the existing building, if you were going to have concessions vended out of it, if you were going to improve the restrooms, only having access on the, I'm going to call it east and west side, so the river side and the road side, is not perfectly convenient. It would probably lend itself to say if you could open something in the, I'm going to call them the changing areas, maybe have some sort of open arch. You could maybe have a concession window on the exterior of the building or something similar, so you could access the building on more locations. That's the general idea. We would probably start with that, get some feedback from historic preservation, and then obviously that the board here could weigh in on a rendering. Right now, I don't have a photo for you because we've not gone down that road. So that's one piece. The other piece was, what is permittable from constructing along the river? So we started by talking with the DNR, and the DNR let us know that we'd have to be above the ordinary high water mark. They also let us know that they do not permit the sand to be attached to the Wisconsin River. You can't build onto the waterway with a beach. If we wanted to improve the beach or relocate a different beach or have sand here, we would be required to have a buffer, essentially, with like a walkway down to the water. They wouldn't allow us to go ahead and attach that sand to the water. So we started talking through what that allows us to do or what the options are. And what you see in the rendering, and I apologize, this rendering is a little bit distorted, but you see kind of a stepped approach where you could access the water by walking down what I'm going to refer to as kind of a concrete step. Those of you that might have been to similar, like maybe a Madison Terrace, might have seen something like this. The reason that's constructible is the DNR told us, for our planning purposes, the existing concrete wall that runs along the building is the ordinary high water mark. If we're behind the wall or on the building side, we would be in compliance. If we wanted to go past the wall, it would require a larger permit from them. So we talked a little bit about just in principle constructability. If we did this stepped approach and then remove the existing wall, would that be okay? And they said, in principle, yes. They did notify us, though, we'd have to talk to the local permitting office about what they would permit with impermeable surfaces and things within our local jurisdiction, within this flood, the area that's adjacent to water and any flood areas or anything of that nature. So after we met with them, before we even talked to the local office, we went to the next jurisdiction, which is Consolidated Water and Power Company, QIPCO. We talked with QIPCO about, would this be allowed along the water, which they have the rights to? they have the flooding rights in this area, if you recall, similar to Piffner Park. What Quipco said is based on what they're seeing, they did not have anything that they would object to. In addition, they did not believe we'd need any additional permitting through them or through FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which Quipco has the local license and jurisdiction for. So lots of layers here, as you can tell. So we met with them, and in principle, they said they liked the idea of some public access for boats to be able to stop by the boat. You'll see here kind of is that boat parking to go to use that space. That's a benefit for them for their recreational rights. So they also said they believed it's constructible. We then met with Director Kronosky and his team just to kind of talk through what they would allow locally. And very similarly, based on what we did for review, they believe what we're showing is also constructible, that it would not be in non-compliance with anything locally. So where does that all leave us? No numbers have been put on this. And as we know, as we plan our budgets 5 years out, I think it's reasonable to say, I met with the mayor and the comptroller, that this is a long-range probably planning item. We haven't gotten into grants, or we haven't gotten into any fundraising or anything of that nature, but we do need to set a vision or a general vision for what we want to do. So what I've got in the Park Commission packet here tonight is ultimately to ask if it's okay if staff continues down the road of getting the local buy-in from our historic preservation on the building, and then if the commission would like any other elements put into this right now as it stands, or if anything looks like, hey, what about this? It's a really appropriate time to do that. And then the last thing is the commission interested in maybe incorporating a question or part of this in our CORP plan, our comprehensive outdoor rec plan, which we're gonna be doing this year, and adopting this then say at the end of the year? Or would we like to move sooner and get some more of this feedback and run this kind of as a standalone and then just incorporate it in the plan? If I was giving a recommendation on this, I think the feedback from the community is probably gonna be warranted. There's a lot of interest in this location. It's a heavy visible area. I think there's no harm in us kind of running this as part of the CORP, maybe having a couple questions in the CORP related to it, and using that feedback as we would adopt it into the CORP plan. The benefit to that is that the CORP sets the roadmap for us over the next 5 to 7 to 8 years, especially for grants. So that process seems to kind of line up. But with that said, this is going to have a lot of interest too, so we definitely could do things sooner. It doesn't have to just be part of the CORP. So to simplify down that long explanation, I'm basically looking for early feedback here to say, we like this, we don't like that, if the commission has anything strongly on that. Next, just saying is okay, or authorization for staff to continue down that review by historic preservation on a rendering for the building. And then just lastly, is the CORP kind of incorporation the best method or the method that the commission would like? Or would you like me to do something separately or move on this sooner? One other thing I do need to mention is I did get a call from a community member today that wanted to share that there was a lot of components of the plan that they liked, but they wanted me to offer, and they couldn't make the meeting, I don't think, today. So Trevor asked me to say that if whether or not the parking stalls are absolutely needed right off the bat. And what the comment was, and it's a fair one, is that our existing gravel parking lot, in addition to the whole green space parking lot next to the skate park, right now currently, unless there's a ball game and a great day on the river, there's quite a bit of parking there that people could walk up what we show as a walkway along the road, and they could access this space by foot. And that's a very good point in a lot of cases. So that it would lend itself for the commissioner for us to consider. We know it fits here, but would it have to be part of the first initial phase or not? And the other thing that got brought up was, what about some of the locations for benches and bike racks, things of that nature? In this concept plan, we've not gotten to that site level detail, but certainly this is going to attract a lot of bike traffic that we need parking for. So we would accommodate that in the final plan when we know what the building looks like. But those are two good points I wanted to mention on his behalf that he couldn't make the meeting. So I wanted to bring those up as something that we would want to incorporate or talk about before we finalize.
Great, a lot of information there. And when people say, why don't you do something with that building, we can see it's really a multi-layered process that you have to go through before anything can happen.
Yeah.
So I know we've had questions in the past from people that wanted to see us create a beach there again. Yeah, so I was interested to hear that according to the DNR, we can't add any sand. So if we don't proceed with some plan for this building in that area, it's going to just continue to deteriorate. And I think everybody wants to save the WPA buildings. They've got, wonderful look and wonderful history, so that's great.
And on the sand, if we were really set on having the swim area in the sand, we'd have to just basically set it off, and then we'd have to have, whether it be, plantings or something of that nature as a buffer. That's the biggest part. So it would look different than what some traditionally would see as a standard beach or the beach in the traditional mold. So.
So questions or comments for the director?
Well, thanks, Stan, for doing all that work. It's a lot of layers, like you said. Looking at the patio seating area to the north, I know that in that area, I was looking at the aerials, but there's some memorial trees and there's a lot of there's just a nice place to kind of chill in the grass and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if that's something that could be held off on in the initial stage, like first, deal with the crumbling concrete barrier and the building first, and then maybe later you move that out. But I know there's a lot of memorial trees there you'd have to remove, or have you accounted for that?
Yeah, so that's a great point. There is a number of memorial trees, and some of them will be potentially able to be moved, but the larger ones would be something we'd have to work through in terms of exactly removal and replacement, or how that would work. To your point about could it be built later, certainly. I mean, it could be something that could be done later if we wanted to, or in addition, we could say we don't want that large area either. It fits and it would give more spaces to sit, but that definitely would be something that obviously I think it would fill if we built it. I mean, I think people are going to use it, but the trees, honestly, the large trees we have here is the worst part of it. If we could save them and plant around them, it would be great. And Bob, I'd welcome your thoughts with the way the asphalt is there and taking that asphalt out.
It would be a real uphill battle. I'm not sure that we'd get much out of it, even if we try.
Yeah, and that was kind of the sentiments when Todd and I talked about it too, was just how do you do it? Literally the asphalt is kind of crumbling back in a lot of these trees because they've grown so large. So it would change the way it looks, and we'd have to account for the memorial trees. And we've not had much scenarios yet where we've had to cut down a memorial tree or something like that. So we'd have to be very sensitive and work through a plan on that too.
Yeah, but I think, I just looking at it, like the first things, obviously the building, and then the beach area. But to me, it seemed like the biggest things to tackle first. But I think I'd like to see a couple other ideas as far as the seating and patio goes.
Makara.
Yeah, so thank you, Director, again, for all the work that you've done already on this. I really like the idea of putting this as part of the survey, getting more input. I know that was something we talked about kind of from the beginning of the steering committee of, recognizing this as a community park, and because of that, really asking the community for their input. I think too, we looked at that as a way to have more buy-in as far as getting some community support and funding, because we know this will be a huge project. I really welcome it to my district, but I see that it'll be a long time in the future. I'm glad that with the building that, and I would assume everyone's in agreement with us, going to historic preservation and doing what we can to respect the history that's behind that. And it does add its own feeling to the park that would be really hard to replicate. So I'm glad there's hope for the building, despite having been in it and not feeling that there was, because that was a gloomy place. So just a question, when you talk about the open arches,
Yes.
are you talking about the part that looks like it was filled in?
Yeah.
Even though that is the original building, but it...
Yes, exactly. So we asked the structural engineer, like, how does that work? And the structural engineer said there's a couple options. If you were to try to do both, you can put a lintel plate in, is how he explained it, where you could basically give structure and strength to the area around it and open up the middle. Or what was talked about is that if you basically reconstructed the wings, this is just, kind of big idea talks about, they could dismantle in a way that the stone could be saved on the wings and then rebuild, so you'd have maybe one arch opening on all three walls. So they said there's a lot of options based on budget, obviously, but also what the desired look would be. And with those lintel plates, they can span openings in some creative ways, is how he kind of phrased it to me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other comments? I appreciated both Matt's comment and Alder Zarazuta's comments. And also, the question about having all the parking, were you the one that raised the issue about the
No, but
parking?
I forgot to mention, I like the comment that whoever it was that made about not needing parking going north. I think that's probably true. And then I noticed there's additional parking suggested to the south, which, that'd be a good spot for it. Not much else going on down in that spot.
Well, I was thinking too that if we're talking the specifics of parking, we could maybe even just look at a couple of handicap stall parkings there, 2 or 3, because the rest of the parking is just really across that little footbridge. It's not very far, so that would be something to be considered. And I like the idea too of getting the public involvement sooner rather than later, rather than presenting a finished plan. So some things like the issue with the trees, things like that can come up before things are started or disappearing. So that would be good. Yes, Alder Shore.
Thanks. In relation to that, I see Wayne asks about the connection to the court plan. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the court plan inclusion makes it grant eligible for DNR processes if we were to seek something along the lines of stewardship. And we haven't looked into the eligibility, but if it's in the corp, that makes it eligible if it's we can apply for it. Because it's actually one of the first steps. You can't apply for a state DNR grant without it in the corp. But yes, the other thing that helps with the corp is our corp will include a kind of a roadmap of projects we have on the docket and some of the new ones proposed. So it gives justification additionally saying, hey, we've gone through the public process when we do submit it into that 5-year planning model for the city's overall budget. As we know, the budget's always, the requests far exceed the dollars, but it makes it easier when we get to the point where, let's say it's in the final 2 or 3 or 4, to say, hey, has this been planned for? And we can point back and say, yeah, in 2023, we went through this public process. So when we're in 2027 or 8 or 9, we can kind of talk about, yeah, this was something we wanting to do. So certainly that's a great question and a very good point.
I remember that the last purchase of property by Bucholtz, this exact thing came up. So there it is. This was planned for. This was identified. Are we going to stick to the plan or not?
Yeah.
Great. Dan, would you want us to do a motion tonight, or how should we approach this?
Yeah, I'm comfortable, being that we're not really expending anything at that point, I'm comfortable on the direction. I mean, is it fair for me to say that the rendering is a good idea and getting that feedback to bring back here after they would weigh in? Looking into some more seating options to see if we don't have to expand so far north or save some of the trees. Incorporation of this, I'm going to call it draft, into the corp survey and feedback for the community for later adoption of a final plan. And then considering the idea of only doing accessible stall additions, non-other parking areas, and utilizing the existing parking in the park. Did I miss anything additional? Oh.
Alder Zarazua.
No, but a comment as far as the parking. Even with changing the parking, people are still gonna park.
Yeah.
I mean, people park all along the lagoon, on the half on the grass. So I think understanding that that's a natural thing that's happening and how to find a way to accommodate that. Then also, just speaking for people who have disabilities who might not have a handicap parking pass but do have limitations that, we still want to be able to have accessibility for them too.
So that is a fair point, and one thing we could do, because this is going to be concept plan, not design, we could say that these are the stall numbers that fit. We don't know if we're going to build them right away. Then what we could do is say when we get to design in the future, we could say, I'm just going to take the north end of the plan where it kind of butts up to the seating area. Maybe we'd say those 4 stalls we're going to build now, they're accessible stalls, or we're going to build 8 there, but it doesn't mean we have to build, I think we have, I don't know if it's like 23 or 24 all at one time. So to that end, I guess we could say, we're planning to say parking fits here. We're not committed to saying parking's being built here right away. That might be a way to balance both, to say we kind of plan for it when the need would arise, or to your point, if we end up with 20 vehicles parking up the roadway, blocking it anyways, we might decide to say, okay, phase 2 is we got to get this done right now because it's already happening or something of that nature. So I'd offer that if your commission's okay with that.
Would it be then like a motion to accept or support the concept and request inclusion of it in the next comprehensive plan? Although you continue to work on the idea?
You certainly could, yep.
I mean, So if we need to take some kind of action
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, ultimately, I
Okay.
can take it on staff direction, or it can be
Okay.
definitely a motion.
Okay,
It's
well,
up to
I
whatever
don't know, I
the
think,
board-
are you all comfortable with staff direction on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes.
Yep,
That-
so
that'd
it's
be
all
great.
clear based on that feedback, and then I guess the next time it'll likely come here, the rendering of the building will come sooner. But the final plan will be a result of feedback we get during the court plan, and then we would adopt this as part of inside the court plan, so. That works for me, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Dan. This next item might kind of go along the same lines. Item number 8, discussion on city-owned boat slips and area adjacent on Franklin Street.
So,
Director?
yes, so there is some similar components here. So the mayor had asked staff to look into a few things to see if there's a possibility. So to set the table on this a little bit, we currently have like around a dozen slips or so that have about an 8-year wait list, sometimes more. It looks like the people that are closest on that wait list right now signed up around 2013, 2012. So there's a far larger demand right now than the number of slips we have. So there's been, I think, some talks that predate me even potentially of whether or not the city would ever, be interested in this. So the mayor was interested in seeing what it would take and looking into it. So where I've taken this so far and why it's here tonight is we had similar conversations with, starting with Consolidated Water Quipco to say, okay, what would this require from a licensing and permit standard and also the DNR? What Quipco stated is that this projecting out from the shoreline would likely require a FERC review, a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission review. They could help as part of that process because they're the licensure holder. The city has done this for other things in the past. And what they see was not anything that jumped out as them as saying, okay, that couldn't happen. So that's as far as we've taken it. We haven't done any design or anything of that nature, but we had some real basic and principal conversations about what it could look like and if they'd allow it. Additionally, we talked to the DNR about what the limits are, or how many boat slips can happen. It's really based on how much shoreline frontage you have to the water. And the city's in a unique position that we own from Bucholtz all the way down towards the bank. So they base it on, imagine a residential setting of how many lineal feet you have of shoreline and the number of slips, or if you can have like 2 boat docks or 2 boat slips, not boat slips, docks at your own residential property. So what that basically means is that comfortably, unless we were envisioning a huge addition, we would be allowed by the DNR without having to go for additional permitting underneath an exemption that they have for this already. Other requirements, if we were to talk about an exemption with the DNR, is that we couldn't be wider than 5 feet on the gangways, like the header and the finger docks of the construction. So that if you're under 5 feet, you don't have to go into another layer of permitting. So where did that leave us? Basically, it meant that it's buildable again if we wanted to do something along the shoreline in principle. Obviously, there's some local things we'd have to look through. So the reason it's on the Park Commission packet tonight is to basically discuss, it's not currently in the comprehensive outdoor rec plans. We don't have it on the immediate docket or budget dollars to say we're gonna add this. I believe there's been also some historic conversation about, does the city want to be in the business of doing this and having these things, or is it better served for something in the private end or having somebody else do it? The other parts of it that could be advantageous is that, okay, it does allow more spots for the demand. Another way of looking at it is though, if we only add 10 or 12, does it still help that list, or does the list grow larger with a larger piece of it? From a funding side of things here, in conversations with the comptroller, because we charge a fee for it, this could be something in some creative financing situation where if there's some money borrowed for it, the money that's collected from the slips could pay it back, and then it would start to become profitable. We don't know exactly what the costs are yet. We haven't carried it to that point, but that's the direction we'd have to go if we wanted to talk about it, because obviously it's not part of our plan that we're doing right now. So the reason I've got it here for the Park Commission to talk through is I'm looking for some direction from the commission to say, are we supportive, is the commission supportive of looking into this more, going further with it and saying, let's do this sooner, or is this something that the commission says, based on our previous conversations and our thoughts on it, where we're at right now with the number of slips we have is where we're gonna stop, or any other combination of that in between. If in addition, similar to the last item, if the commission was to say we're interested in this, then my last really question was going to be now, or again, do we ask within our court plan or doing some of our planning to see if it's something for the future? So other things that did get mentioned to me, even the conversations with the mayor, was that obviously more access to the water is something that's great, and having more slips for people to have boats there puts more boat access on the water. Recently, the Downtown Association put in their boat dock that's down by the bank, so they can park there and go downtown. So there's been, Prime Water Anglers has been doing a number of projects with us to try to improve some of our boat facilities. So there's been a lot of positive energy around the boating area for the city. That was what kind of spurred some of the interest in it. So with that, I guess I'm looking for some direction from the commission on how far you'd like me to carry it.
All right, how about, yes, Bob?
Well, it seems to me before we even talk about whether it's practical and so on, we have to consider the fact that that riverfront area there is the jewel in the crown of Stevens Point. I mean, we have to think about what it means overall to the appearance and the fact that there's only a certain amount of riverfront area that we have to deal with, and do we want to take it away from some of the uses we have now? Do we want to go back and take a look at our comprehensive plan a few years ago, see whether we modify it? We really need to think this through from the aesthetic standpoint and from all of the implications of this, not just the practical. I think before we do anything in depth on this, we really need to look at our comprehensive plan and take a fresh look at it again.
Thank you, Bob.
I
Yes,
agree
John?
with Bob. I think it's definitely, like you said, it's the prized area, and I think when we'll redo the plan, I think we need to decide at that what the future will be, so. Since it's not, in the plan now, and I think, look at it down the road.
Yes. Alder Zarazua, did you have your hand up too?
Yes. So, I mean, it's very valid as far as saying, like, we have limited shoreline, and what do we want that to look like? I spoke with the director earlier today, and we talked about, people that live along that area, but it's not even just about that. Like, I mean, people are attracted to those parks because it's on the river, and if we take something that blocks some of that, we're taking away the whole reason of going to those parks to a degree. I think too, in saying, like, this can only benefit a limited amount of people in the city. So when we're working on amenities for the public, something that's really limited to only serving a handful of people, even if we can make the money back, it's having an impact on everyone that contributes to the parks. I guess I'd wonder too if there's an environmental impact other than the visual part of it to doing this. I don't really know. And I would suggest, since we're already talking about what we'd have in a survey, that if that could go out as a question too, and what people in general feel about that. Because I think that would either support or contradict what we're saying here. Maybe as a whole, people do want there to be more boat slips available, and then we would have that information.
We might, if we ask that question, we might want to be pretty specific with it too.
Yes.
Like, if we're talking about putting in more boat slips, it's not 50 or 100, where a lot more people would have access, it maybe be 10. So if we do ask, we're gonna have to be specific. Mike, did you have a comment?
Yeah, maybe what this board should do is maybe next month or in May when the weather's nice, before the meeting, take a walk along the riverfront down, just kind of imagine what something might look blocking the river and.
The existing boat slips, if I ever remember right, it's been a while since I went and walked out and then looked at them, but I think they're kind of run down. And they're in need of some repairs. So we're talking about adding new boat slips, but how about repairing and fixing up the ones that are already there? I mean, or, making some that are available for anyone to use. You don't have it permanent, it's just a slip you can tie up to, But I'm looking at a satellite picture of the shoreline, and on the, I guess it's the other side from where they are now, that's sort of like a covered area. There's a lot of tree cover on that side, to the other side of the boat launch. And just looking at that, I think aesthetically, if you added 5 on that other side, it would kind of look nice. And it'd be out of sight from people walking around from all the people living on the water, you wouldn't actually see them very, very well. So,
That's a really good point too on the other side. There was a slight discussion, I guess the current's a little heavier over there, so we haven't looked into it, but it could possibly still work if we were interested in it. If we were to go forward, whatever way we make this work, that's definitely something we could look into. The only thing that's a little different there is where the slips are now, they're kind of around the current, so
Right.
that's why they work, I guess. And I don't have a boat, so I can't speak firsthand on it, but I guess it's a little stronger on that side. So, but that was actually one of the ideas that got brought up right away is, could it go to the west of the existing slips? Because it is kind of there's a lot of greenery in that area that blocks the view right now.
yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think clean up the ones we have before we start talking about new ones.
Yeah, I think it is important to be considering the current and the ice buildup in the river, but I'm sure that's a whole other issue that you have to look at if we're looking at boat slips. Some of you might remember the boat dock that was out into the river, I think, when Scott Schultz was mayor, if you remember that. Some of you are old enough to remember, and that lasted a few years before it got kind of destroyed by the river, so anyway, it looks like, are we coming to some kind of a consensus on this, that perhaps it should be incorporated as part of the review for the next comprehensive plan? Is that?
Do you need a motion or just a
Oh, we'll need a
recommendation?
motion.
Yeah, based on my notes, what I would have, and obviously you can make a motion, but it would be kind of a walk-in tour, potentially next month or the month after, and then the motion would say, we could say something along the lines of including a question about expansion of the boat slips with maybe a quantity and more specific location in the corp that would be considered.
Just out of curiosity, I don't know anything about designing boat docks. Looking at it, to me, is it possible for the space that exists there to be utilized better, as far as maybe extending a little further, like an L or a T, or, I mean, not necessarily expanding the footprint along the river, but sort of making better use of the area that's there? We might be able to add half a dozen.
Yeah, with the new dock that's well
Yeah,
constructed
like
to be
key
more
and- yeah.
efficient, yeah.
I mean, as long as the current ones need to be repaired or replaced, maybe we could put in slightly larger, slightly more spots.
And then we always have the cost issue with that, and then how many people does it benefit? So,
Yeah, but-
that's always a piece of it. Okay, great. Do you need anything more from us on that, Dan?
No, if that's good, I can work underneath that premise, is that we'd set up the tour for a future agenda item, and then, again, we're gonna be doing our kickoff meeting soon for the corp. We would incorporate a question or questions potentially about supporting the expansion, and then also quantity and location.
Okay, Alders, Arizona.
Just a request as part of the tour to maybe have those different ideas of designs of what the boat slips could look like.
Like a sketch you're saying?
I think we should aim for May, because aiming for the first meeting in April, that's pretty ambitious.
It'll be a
You know,
blizzard
April
for
in
sure.
Wisconsin.
It could be 75, we could have a foot of snow.
In the same day.
Okay. All right.
25.
Item number 9, the director's report.
Okay, on the director's report, we've got a couple changes in our staff that I wanted to mention and bring to the Park Commission. So we were, our art director had chose to pursue other options, so we did have a vacancy there. And I'm happy to report that we interviewed. We had a lot of interest in that position at part-time. And we were able to hire Katie Kramer with a C, no relation. But Katie Kramer did join us. She began her duties on Monday. So rather than bringing her to the meeting right away the first week, she'll come join us one of these future weeks after she's got kind of the gallery up and running. And I'll definitely get everyone a chance to meet her.
You
So.
said art director?
Yes, the Riverfront art director.
Okay.
Yep. So she's got a bunch of energy. She's doing a great job here the first few days. So we're excited to have her as part of the team, and we'll have some new fresh ideas over there. So. In addition to that, we did have an ice center and pool maintenance technician position open. We did post for that position as well, and we had interest. We interviewed external and an internal candidate, and I'm happy to report that we did hire the internal candidate. So Ron Otto began his duties Monday as well. Yeah, it was Monday. He was working as kind of an interim there and filling in. He had some experience at the arena, which is lucky for us. He's going to do a great job. We're really happy to have him move within the department to kind of a step up for him, and then that's going to create a vacancy that we just posted today for a park technician. So we'll have potentially, or now I would think we'd have to have a new face eventually, but we're just going to be posting that and looking at a hiring process here in later March. So a little bit of jockeying, but it's nice, it's new, and we got some new fresh faces and people in different places. That'll be great for the team. I also did want to mention Riverfront Rendezvous, scheduled for July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We just released the full lineup, if you didn't see it. The main one that people might remember is Here Come the Mummies. They're on Friday night, but there's several other well-known acts in the area that are on that lineup. We're now working through some of the children's games activities with the fire department and EMS services. It was really popular last year. We hope to expand that this year, and still bringing back several other things. One big new thing we're trying to work on is what we'd like to call Market in the Park. So our goal is to maybe have some areas where people could set up like a 10 by 10 tent on Saturday, kind of the sandwich day, I'll call it, between the fireworks and the first day, where maybe people could do some sales of either crafts or some other things in that vicinity of what I'll call the food truck area that we had last year. So that's not a flushed out idea. We still got to work through it, but we believe we might be able to position tents slightly to maybe add that feature and give another option to bring people down to the riverfront during Riverfront Rendezvous. So other than that, things are planning out well, and it looks like we're looking forward to another great year for it. And it's year number 38, so it's pretty cool to think about. Not many festivals in the state of Wisconsin can say that 38-year run. So here's to hopefully 38 more, but we're really excited about it, and I think it's going to be a great year for it this year, and everybody on the team is working hard trying to get ready for that in July, even though here we sit in March. So lots of other great things going on, a lot of project stuff right now, but those are really the three main highlights for the department right now.
Any questions for Dan? Yes,
Regarding
Sean.
Riverfront, I've had 2 people ask me about bingo. Is that not going to happen again?
Yeah, so we're a little bit in limbo. They're looking for another coordinator, so the year off led to some changes with the church, and that's been a partner for it. So they're looking for a coordinator within their organization. So if they can do that, it'll be back, but they're still working through that piece. So we do have a Polish band, though, a polka band, I should say, back in the festival as well. That's on Friday. So anybody that wants to get their polka shoes out, come on down for Friday.
Dan, can you comment on the winter sports activities and how successful things were?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. I should have definitely had that included too. The way the weather is right now, I don't know how I missed that. We are in a place where we're gonna end up closing the rinks because it won't carry the truck, and they're bubbling from the heat now from the sun. But we had a terrific ice season due to it being cold right around December area. So we've been open. We've not had to close a rink since until just here the other day. The only thing we did run into a little bit of a hurdle was some of the staff shortages and changeover. We didn't get a rink in Emerson this year, but we hope that that's the last time we can say that. It's going to be a priority for us next year. That's a really popular one. But we did have the one in East Oaks, which was used on the other side of the interstate. So those will be closing. Winter sports, we have enough snow-ish. If we get some snow in this next snowfall, we may be able to do something with that yet. But if the snow doesn't come here in the capacity they're talking, it's a pretty good chance we might be closed here this weekend already. So. But that was a good year, too. We had really good numbers for some of that.
Well, the event on Sunday seemed to be pretty popular, and the ice rink was still in good condition downtown, so.
Yeah, the
It's on ice.
Polkas on Ice was a great event. That's I think, year number 4, I want to say, or 3 for sure, ever since we put the rink in, so it must be the 3rd year. And yeah, it seems like it's growing in attendance. So that rink is holding up pretty well yet because of the liner. So it sits on that concrete, which helps give it kind of a chiller effect, and the liner seems to hold that one in longer. So while we're not, that one we're still doing the best we can. The ones that are on the ground are the ones that are breaking the hardest right now. So.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Dan? If not, can we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, John. Motion to adjourn, second.
Go for it.
Thank you, Bob. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Right. We're adjourned. Thank you.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.